All right, thanks to Academy Sports and Outdoors, Loochador Podcast. We'll just go straight into it because A&M gets the 7th seed against Penn State in the Des Moines, in the Midwest Regional. I hate saying, like, here we go again, BAS, yada, yada, but another clear example of a committee hating or disrespecting. I don't know. Ridiculous is where I want to begin, Billy. This is just a 7 seed. Are you kidding me?
I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to try to go through this without cussing, even though we're not, this isn't live. It's on our own site. We could really say whatever we want, but it's going to be my goal in this thing is to not use like profanities because that's how I feel right now. First off, Texas A&M is back in the NCAA tournament, and there was no doubt. And now you wonder, a couple of those wins, we didn't think A&M needed these jackass. Oh, there we go. These people, these clowns on the committee. A&M wasn't in until a lot later than we thought they were, apparently. Mm-hmm. Somebody in that room should have had the common sense to step up. And you just have to wonder, Nuño, you're right. You go back to the playoff selection in 2020 and that snub, which could have gone either way. I get that, but they were on the wrong side of it, and many believe they were snubbed there, and I wouldn't argue with that. You go back to last year's NCAA tournament and what happened with Texas A&M when they had no business being left out of the tournament, but they were, and went on to prove in the NIT that they belonged. And then you go to this year. And we talked earlier today. I said, for the last couple weeks, you wonder if the committee is going to screw A&M unreasonably so. Some would say it's for the Aggies' reaction and to last year. I don't. If that's the case, then every one of their asses should be fired. They have no business being on a committee if they can't remove personal bias out of it. Then you're not doing your job, and you have no business of having the privilege and the honor to be on any kind of selection committee in college athletics. Unfortunately, these people are humans. They get their feelings hurt. They hold grudges. Clearly that's going on. And the other thing they're doing is they're doing things for money. We'll talk about the A&M Texas matchup later. Yep. Okay. I don't care that A&M is playing Texas. That's the part of this I like. If they can get by Penn State, who, by the way, is a much tougher first-round matchup than you were expecting when you thought A&M was going to be a 6, a 5, or even a 4. Much tougher matchup. The Aggies will have a hard time getting out of that one. But then Texas has a gripe, too. I said this this week. Texas is a 2 seed, and they're a strong 2. And if they end up playing an A&M team that's not only a rival, but also a team that's underseeded by at least 2 lines, A&M's got a better resume than several of the 5s, maybe even a couple of 4s. And Texas has to play them potentially in the second round. They got a gripe too. But the fact that A&M was so grossly underseeded is disgusting. And it's like you just told me. You asked before we went on. What'd you say?
I said, what would have happened if we would have won? We would have probably been, at best, a 6 at best.
If Texas A&M had beaten Bama today and won the SEC tournament title, been 2-0 against Alabama, and essentially 18-3 in 21 SEC games, they would have probably been on the same seed line as fricking Kentucky.
And had they not won against Arkansas, they're an 8-9.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They would have been an 8 or 9 seed had they lost to Arkansas.
They beat Bama just 8 days ago. They get to the championship game. They win. They lose 3 games in the SEC, and they're getting a 7 seed. And
was Missouri an 8?
I believe that's right.
They beat Missouri twice. Auburn was a 9, or was Missouri a 7?
Let me just double check. I'm looking.
They beat Auburn, who's a 9. They beat them twice. They beat Missouri twice. They beat Tennessee, who's sitting at a 4 seed. They beat Alabama, the number 1 overall seed. They advanced to the SEC tournament final, finished second in the second toughest league in the country, not only during the season, but also in the tournament, which beyond...
Missouri's an 11.
Who is?
An 11. Missouri's an 11. I'm sorry, Mississippi State. I'm sorry.
Would that beyond a shadow of a doubt, they were the second best basketball team in the Southeastern Conference this year. Missouri's a 7.
Yep.
Missouri, who A&M beat twice, I think both times by double digits, is the same seed as Texas A&M. What in the hell has Missouri done resume-wise to compare to Texas A&M? An Aggie team that beat Tennessee. They beat the number 1 overall seed. They went 15-3 in the SEC.
It's the moving target. Last year, you didn't do enough in the conference play. You did a lot in the non-conference. This year, you have a couple of lapses in the non-conference. You rectify it for 2.5 freaking months. No, sorry, not good enough.
Look, I'm very happy they're in the tournament. By the way, they got Des Moines freaking Iowa too. I mean, look, the destinations were not the best. I think Des Moines will actually be. It's actually a pretty fun basketball town. At least you're going basketball country. I actually don't hate that. But look, the Aggies are in a region now with essentially, they're not only getting shafted on their seed line, they're also going to a region with really, to me, that's like 2 number 1 seeds. Because Texas, the way they played down the stretch, and credit the Longhorns, they should be. They had a real case to be that 4th overall number 1. So you got Texas and U of H in there. The only good thing about that region is if the Aggies do go and make it to that second weekend, they would actually be in Kansas City, right, without Kansas being there. It's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's huge.
But they got to get there, and it's going to be really difficult. But I'll tell you this. Texas A&M has beaten a better team than Texas this year. They beat a Tennessee team that beat Texas by about 15 and controlled that whole game. They beat a better team than Texas and Alabama. They beat the team that went into Houston and beat the Cougars, the number 1 seed in their region.
Right.
And they've beaten a lot of teams better than Penn State. Penn State is good. Penn State is playing way up. I mean, they just played, today for the Big Ten championship, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They're playing way up. They're a hot team. A&M has beaten many teams on that level this year. It's a tougher draw, and Penn State's certainly capable of knocking A&M out early.
They lost by 2 to Purdue.
Okay, so they were 2 points from being the Big Ten tournament champs. They're playing their best basketball. They're a good team. They're really good, and they're tough. That's going to be a 40-minute game. A&M, I think the Aggies will win that game. They're going to win it late. It's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, 7-10s are.
Yeah.
That's why you want the 5-12, even though those are tough. The further up the line you get, the easier it gets. And A&M earned that during the season. They were not rewarded that with the selection. I think that as we sit here, it's just shocking to me. It's not shocking, though, but it's surprising to say here as we sit here when the selection's done, Texas A&M got the worst seeding of any team in the field this year. Even the guys on TV were surprised by it.
Jay Wright, yeah.
And Buzz Williams and his players are excited. They should be. They're not scared of Penn State. No. They're not scared of Texas or U of H or anybody. They don't flinch. They don't blink. They are certainly capable of winning 2 really tough games and beating a team that will line up toe-to-toe with them in Penn State and beating a Texas team. Again, Texas might have got screwed over as much as A&M on this deal. They earned maybe a 1 seed. They got a 2, and they're having to play essentially like a team that's
a 4 seed, a 3
that's
seed.
Played like a 4 seed for almost 3 months, for 2.5 months in their second round.
It's the only thing surprising, Billy, is how predictable this is.
Yeah.
Because, the whole time the show's going on, I kind of said a couple times, maybe look at this 4 seed. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe they'll be nice this year. Mm-hmm. But, of course, they weren't.
Yep. I'm torn. I want to sit here and complain about it, but I also want to say, you know what? Just go out there and win. But at the same time, we don't play basketball. David, on one hand, I don't want to sit here and just complain. This is a big day. They're going back to the dance. Like we said, Texas A&M can beat Penn State. They can beat Texas. We saw what happened when they played Xavier last year. That could be just an absolute dogfight if the Musketeers made it that far. And they can beat U of H. I mean, I'm not saying they're gonna or they're going to be favored, but they certainly can accomplish all that. But we're not taking the court. We don't control all that. So we're just sitting here reacting to what we just saw on TV, what we just saw take place. And the fact of the matter, and I don't think it's arbitrary. The fact of the matter is Texas A&M got a really, really raw deal from that committee.
Yes.
And I expect Buzz and the players and everybody to take the high road. They don't care. After what happened today against Alabama, they're ready to get back to College Station and start preparing.
Billy,
But I can sit here and call it like it is.
First off, it'd be nice if the committee thought about this team played on Sunday to put them on a Friday. Just saying it out loud. Second thing is, I expect this team to do exactly what they did last year. We may be mopey for a day or so. They went into the NIT and they wrecked shop. They had a rough first half in that first matchup, and that was it. And then they turned it on the rest of the way.
Yep.
I expect them to have that same kind of attitude that we may be upset about it. They're going to go play ball.
Oh, they don't care. I mean, they really don't. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. They're the opposite. When they saw Texas in there, they're fired up. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
And you know, I thought all along it was going to be like Texas or Baylor. You knew a Big 12 team was going to be lurking right there. Kansas State kind of fit in that. You thought maybe a 6-3. But, man, like, again, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion this evening and tonight about A&M. How many times is the committee going to try in the postseason? Are these committees going to try to set up A&M in Texas? I'm excited about them joining the league just so we can get past that crap. Mm-hmm. You have an entire country's worth of games and matchups. And if A&M Texas would have been, you know, if the Aggies would have been a 4-5 and Texas would have been the 1, or if A&M would have been, you know, well, Texas wasn't going to be a 3. But, like, if it would have fit more naturally, where it was more of a, you know, like, yeah, they would meet in the Sweet 16. But when you see something like this, David, you understand that these, oh man, I'm going to do it again, these ass clowns on the committee are purposely trying to set the matchup up, and we all know it, for TV, for them to talk about tonight, for the excitement and make the tournament more exciting. And I get that, but not at the expense of taking away what a team earned, which is a higher seed. So you don't pull a team down to set up a matchup. And they did it in basketball. They tried it in hoops a few years ago, and Texas lost to Northern Iowa on that buzzer beater. They tried to set it up them. They do it all the time in the other sports. And a lot of times, I understand some of those sports it's for travel purposes, like the lesser revenue sports. But they always try to set it up, and A&M's won their share, lost their share. They won it in Omaha last year. They've set A&M up in regionals and baseball with Texas. So from that standpoint, I'm excited about them ending up in the same conference so we can get past that, because I do think it tends to pull A&M back into a worse draw than they typically would get. And that's what I know that's what we saw today. Everyone knows it. And the committee will never say that. I do think there's some residual from last year. We knew they were going to hurt A&M because of, let's be honest, a terrible non-conference resume.
Yep.
But since conference play started, Texas A&M's playing at a 2-seed level.
That's why.
So pull them down to a 5.
Yeah.
You're pulling them down 3 lines off of that. Because since January 1st, they've played at a 2-seed level. No worse than a 3. Put them at a 5. Hell, a 6.
A 6, I would have been disappointed, but all right, fine. 7 is, to me, just...
2 lines is wild in this thing. 2 lines is wild. For those of you that don't follow it every year, to drop them 2 lines is insane. And the reality is a lot of people that know a lot more than me and you and a lot more than most of us watching believed they were probably a 5. Some people were starting to wonder if they'd be a 4.
Yeah.
I know you and I thought they were a 5. We were worried about a 6.
And
they got a 7. That was shocking.
I mean, Kentucky gets a 6.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Missouri being a 7.
TCU at a 6.
TCU got a 6. Just looking through some of these, Iowa State is 6.
Yeah. I mean, it's you go through it. I'm telling you right now.
Arkansas gets an 8, a team you beat twice.
Yeah.
You're 1 seed ahead.
Well, here's the deal, David. You didn't beat them twice. You beat them twice, and you finished 15-3 in the same conference that they finished 8-10. In fact, if you count tournament games, they finished 8-11 in this conference. Texas A&M finished 17-4. And you're 1 seed line ahead of them? Think about that. You could do it with Missouri. You could do it with Kentucky, even though Kentucky did win a head-to-head against A&M. You could do it with Kentucky. You could do it with Missouri. And look at Arkansas, of all teams. You won 2 out of 3. You just beat them this week. And you were 17-4. They were 8-11 against the same conference. And that difference is worth 1 seed line?
I hope they ask him tonight. I hope
somebody
comes out and says something.
I've thought this team was special all year. They won't say a damn thing,
No.
David, because they don't. Committee members are like college officials. They don't have to answer to anything. They're also like politicians. When you get the heads of the committees up there, they sit up there and sound just absolutely clueless, like they don't have a damn clue what they're talking about. So the best thing to do is keep them hidden. The best thing to do is to shutter them away, because the more they talk, the more the common folk that aren't a part of the committee, the fans, the people that they're supposed to, represent, provide the best product for, the coaches, the fans, the athletic directors, everything. You get these guys on a committee, they don't want to explain, because the more they talk, the more they box themselves in. The more they talk, the more the secret's out that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they don't study it like they should. And they don't remove the personal bias. They don't remove this matchup would be tasty. This would be really fun. Let's do this. They don't do any of that. So you're going to get some head of a committee, like who was the guy with the weird teeth a few years ago from the college football playoff committee from Iowa.
Yeah.
You had that dude that made no sense. Who was the guy last year from the selection committee that came in there and made zero, even less sense when he tried to explain why A&M didn't make it and why all the mid-majors were in there? This is all too common, and I think Texas A&M being in the SEC, they should be getting a little more benefit of the doubt on this thing, especially when, again, they were the second best team all year in this conference. They were the second best team all year. Wire to wire, not all year, all conference season. That's over 20 games. And there's no way anyone could argue otherwise.
They did it in the regular season, in the conference season, and they did it in the tournament. They withstood, and they were the second best team.
Now, again, let's talk about the draw.
I'm going to look up Penn State.
It's a segue for you to talk about the draw.
Yeah. I'm as you say that, I'm looking at Penn State basketball. I want to look at their schedule, how they were
it's
a
tough.
10 seed
well,
in
they
the
were
Big
on the
Ten
bubble.
tournament. Yep.
They were squarely on the bubble. And you're going to catch them at the wrong time. But like I said, Texas A&M, the Aggies are red hot. Don't just because they went and lost to the best team in college basketball, they've won what? They lost to Bama, they lost to Mississippi State, they lost to Arkansas. I'd say in the last 6 weeks, they've lost 3 games.
So
in the last 6 weeks.
Penn State went 22-13 on the year, 10-10 in the conference, 13-4 at home, 4-7 away, 5-2 neutral. Kind of looking through some other games. They beat Butler this year. They lost to Virginia Tech. Clemson, they beat them in 2 overtimes, 101-94. Michigan State, they lost to them. Trying to see any other big games that pop up.
I think the real thing you look at is just how they perform in that Big Ten tournament, who they beat.
Yeah.
I know, like you said, they lost a close one to Purdue today.
They beat Illinois. They beat Northwestern. They beat Indiana.
Yeah.
They lost to Purdue in the final.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State as a 10 seed is capable of beating a 7 seed at A&M.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt. But over the course of the season, this is just a team that now is starting to play its best basketball.
Kind of reminiscent of Vandy.
That's a good comparison. You kind of wonder how long they can sustain it. You got to ask yourself, what were the weaknesses that led to them being such a bubble team going in? But at the end of the day, I like A&M's chances to win game one. It's going to be a dogfight. And then they play Texas, right? Texas just beat Kansas twice in a week.
Mm-hmm.
They did what A&M couldn't, which was go and beat a 1 seed back-to-back. Rodney Terry's done an amazing job this year. I've watched a lot of that team. They've still got that Chris Beard. I know everybody's going to want to make a joke when I say this. They got that Chris Beard DNA where they play really good defense. Yep. So they're a tough matchup for anyone. And when they get hot shooting, they can really shoot. I think they got great guard play. But so do the Aggies. And again, if A&M and Texas play in round 2, I think that'll be a hell of a basketball game.
Penn State won 8 out of their last 10 games. So very similar to Vandy, what we saw.
Well, and similar to A&M.
Yeah.
I think A&M's
But A&M to me did it the course of the conference, right?
Yeah, they've done it for longer, no question. A&M's a better basketball team than Penn State, but they're going to get Penn State at their best, so the Aggies need to be at their best. And it's going to be really tough. But if they play Texas, that is
I like Texas A&M getting them on the second day of the second
quick turnaround there.
I like
that's going to be a dogfight. But like we said earlier about the Aggies, they made it to the conference finals or the SEC finals last year. They beat a really good Auburn team. Where was Auburn ranked top 5 when they beat them? Yeah, they beat a top 5 Auburn team. They beat a good Florida team, and then they beat Arkansas, who went to the Elite 8. That was last year. They lost to Tennessee. Then they went in the NIT. They ran all the way to the finals. Were playing great basketball, and finally lost on a last second to Xavier to lose the championship. And then this year in the conference tournament, they go out and they beat Arkansas again. They beat a red-hot Vandy team that, like you said, is similar to Penn State. And then they go in and, they lose to Bama. So A&M has proven that this tournament thing, if they can get a win and get going on that quick turnaround, they're tough.
Yeah.
They're really tough. Again, if Texas, I'd like to hear the people covering the Longhorns right now because they've got to be sitting there going, again, they're not scared of A&M. A&M's not scared of Texas. But you cannot be scared of a team and both sides can acknowledge.
I don't want that in the second round.
The Aggies got screwed. They got a much tougher second-round draw than you really thought they would based on what they earned on the court. Same can be said about the Longhorns.
Texas, even though they could be a 1 seed, is taking on a 7 seed that could be a 4-5. That's the reality.
No question. And A&M's got to be careful, and they will. Like, look, if I have any doubt, there are 2 things I know. There are 3 things I know. Buzz and the Aggies aren't scared of anyone in that bracket, from Texas to U of H and all points in between. None of those teams will scare them, and they're capable of beating all of them. They're not going to overlook Penn State at all.
Right.
And they're not complaining, and they're actually probably ready to hop off the plane and go get in the gym tonight or go sit and watch film tonight or scouting reports. I guarantee you they're working on them on the plane probably as we're putting this thing up, and they're excited about it. Those things I know. Buzz will have them ready to play. It's just college basketball. You just got to be ready, and you can't let happen to you what Texas did when the 6-3, I think it was 6-3, A&M Texas matchup in Oklahoma City was set to happen, and Texas got beat, I believe, by an 11 seed Northern Iowa that beat them on a buzzer beater.
Right.
That's if you're A&M, we see that happen all the time in tournaments. 7-10 is not considered a major upset. But here's the thing. Most basketball people, if A&M got knocked out by Penn State, would call it a pretty significant upset. You know why? Because A&M is not a 7 seed.
They're not.
They are by a selection of clowns.
Tomorrow, I'm sure we'll complain a little bit, but it is now about the matchup and the matchups, hopefully, for a while. And there's a chance I think there's a scenario where A&M could play Penn State, Texas, potentially U of H, and Kansas City. Right? Am I saying that correctly?
By the way, if you want to go something on the positive side,
yeah.
If you do get past the first weekend, and believe me, there are much greater upsets that happen in this tournament every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us, from me to you to Logan to, anyone, your wife, kids, brothers, co-workers that fill out a bracket, we all know that there are much greater upsets every year in this tournament than it would be a 7-seeded A&M knocking off a 2-seeded Texas. If they make it to Kansas City, the interesting thing is you don't have the Kansas Jayhawks there as a 1 seed in Kansas City with an overwhelming home court advantage that would probably overwhelm pretty much anyone that has to play them in that kind of setting.
You would probably get them in the Elite 8, not the Sweet 16.
Kansas?
Houston.
Oh, Houston, yeah. Yeah, you'd have to go far.
Yeah.
But look, I think Penn State is a dogfight. I think if they get by that and play Texas, that's a dogfight. And I think if you get into the Sweet 16, who is it, Xavier or who?
Xavier or Mississippi State, Iowa State, Pitt. Those are kind of
I think you'd be looking at probably
Iowa State.
Probably Xavier or Iowa State.
Rematch. Yeah.
Again, both those teams, Texas A&M, flip a coin.
Yeah.
So I understand where Texas wouldn't be a coin flip, but I will say Penn State, A&M's probably on the positive side of a coin flip. They're probably on the negative, the slight underdog to Texas. And then, if they're playing an Iowa State or a Xavier, again, that's probably a 50-50 call.
Yeah.
So there's some potential roadblocks there. Texas A&M has beaten teams as good as everyone in their field. They've beaten them. They haven't played them and competed with them.
They beat them.
They've beaten teams better than everyone in that field. Now, can they do it in a few days and the following weekend? That remains to be seen. But I know this. I know that what happened today in Nashville is not going to sit well with Buzz, with Wade Taylor, Dexter Dennis, Boots, Henry, all of them.
Yeah.
And I know that and one thing I do know is they're going to be prepared and they're going to be ready to put the gloves on and step in the ring for not just one 12-round fight, but several if they have to. They're going to keep swinging. So I'm excited about it. I get frustrated with the consistency of the NCAA. And look, David, I know we're all Aggies, and we wear our hearts on our sleeves. So do all fan bases. You've seen Alabama defend the show that's been going on in Tuscaloosa, like just losing their minds. And I'm thankful that A&M's never had to sit there and defend or try to dance around and justify something like that. But you see it all over college sports. You got people defending, their coaches when they go one way or the other. You got, people. You got the Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher thing. Again, I wonder, how that Greg Byrne thought about that. You've got all these things going on in fan bases. Fans are fanatical, and we run a fan site, and we're talking like this. But I can sit here and say honestly, like the college football one, the playoff. You could have made an argument for Notre Dame. You make the argument for, Ohio State, and you make the argument for A&M.
No.
That one was a much more complex. You had different numbers of games. You had Notre Dame, and did they only beat beat Clemson because Trevor Lawrence had COVID, and then they got pummeled by him when there was a lot going on there. A&M lost big to Bama, and then their only big win was Clemson. There was a lot to sort through. And I think that one was far less obvious. But what this selection committee has done to Texas A&M the last 2 years is criminal. It really is. There's no maroon-colored glasses. There's no bias as I sit here and say Texas A&M got really shafted to miss the tournament last year. And I think what they did to them this year to make them a 7 seed is actually worse than leaving them out of the tournament.
Oh.
Now, the end result isn't as bad because you're in the tournament. But as far as how much they were underseeded and wronged, I think this year was a bigger gap from what they should have been. Whereas last year, A&M was certainly a bubble team that was left out.
It makes me wonder. Remember, for a long time, we said they got to get to 13 wins. You didn't.
Yeah.
But that was like the.
I don't think they would have been in.
If they would have won 12 games, they're not in.
13? I don't think they would have been in, Dave.
Yeah.
They won 15.
They got a 7 seed.
And included beating the number 1 overall seed last week. It's crazy.
All right. We'll have a lot more tomorrow. Billy's going to join me early tomorrow, so we'll have some good stuff. Appreciate everybody watching, and gig 'em. Let's
get to Des Moines, Iowa. We'll be there. Whole TexAgs crew. We're going, and it will be.
It's going to be a party.
It should be. I mean, you can have, R.C. Slocum versus Joe Paterno, Penn State and A&M.
Yep.
Aggies and Nittany Lions have played in a couple bowl games, and they actually played in hoops a few times over the years. And then, I mean, goodness gracious, if the Aggies and Longhorns take the court for a berth in the Sweet 16, that's what college sports is all about.
Absolutely.
That would be fun. You're going to be there. It would be. Remember how fun Omaha was?
Yeah.
When you had Texas and A&M and the tent, how tense it was before that game and those early innings when both teams were trying to hang in, and how good it felt to knock Texas out. And one side's going to feel the euphoria of that if these teams play, and the other one, it's going to be the agony of defeat.
Yep.
It'll be a blast. It really will. And bars, I hope the Aggies handle business. Texas is going to romp Colgate. They're not going to lose like they did to Abilene Christian a couple years ago. Every bar across the state of Texas is going to be packed on Saturday in maroon and white and burnt orange, from Dallas to Houston to Austin to San Antonio. It's going to be a blast. Hopefully that sets up.
Appreciate everybody watching. A lot more tomorrow, as I said. We'll see you then.